Okay, so we've talked about different events, right? So here's event begin play. The event that'll occur when it begins to play is this. We talked about event tick. It runs an event, which could be this multi-gate every frame. I didn't mention that these red ones at top here, that's how they kind of distinguish events, is this is an event. When you press 0, an event occurs, which is runs my multi-gate. And then when I press 1, this event occurs and it resets it. So let's talk a little bit about custom events. All right, so the way that you create a custom event, and I should really clean up a lot of this. You could always bring back the events when we right click, is, let's see, let's keep our event take our event play. We'll keep this, and that way, because we still have access to these. But I can right click and just say add custom event, and it's under add event. And then you can name this whatever you want, test event. And I'll just borrow this for now and wire that in. And so all this event does for now is when it's called, it'll print hello. All right, so let's call our test event here, which prints hello, and we'll do that when we press the 1 key on our keyboard. So let's delete these and get rid of these guys. And then when we press the button, I want to call, and then you'll see there's like these call options, right? And if you look up here, we called our event test event. So call test, and then you go, it's call function test event. So if we compile and save this, and I think it's 1, we press the number 1, it's calling that event that says hello. So that's how you would create a custom event. And you'll find out as we start to build out our character and our game and we start to incorporate more level design stuff, how we're going to have to create a lot of custom events for things like if we want to use specific weapons or do certain things that we don't want to run every frame. Or, we want to create, when we start creating our custom functions in a little bit. Also, say your graph is getting a little unmanageable and you want to find out where this event is, you could double click it and it'll take you right to the test event. Now, something else you can do is you can also create custom inputs on your event. So let's go ahead and hit Control D on this and just move it down here. And then select your test event here. And then here under inputs, go ahead and hit this plus sign here. And then we'll make this an integer. And what I can do in this new parameter is, we can call this health. So say we want it to print hello and then let's print the health. I can take my health and I could just wire it in here. And then I can wire this into here. Let's go ahead and add a couple execution nodes to make this look a little bit better. Plus it's just kind of fun to have them. So something like that. And if we compile and save this, now when I press play and I press 1, you could see hello and 0. So we added a custom input on our event. Now, if you see here, there's delta seconds in this event tick, and this event begin play doesn't have a custom input, like an additional input here, like we did. So some don't have it. And you can also modify this before it gets to the end. So you can see here, let's see, if we double click, where is it? Here, you can see we have health and we have target here. We press 1 and see health is equal to 0 here. So if we change the value at the end of the event, let's go ahead and compile and save this. And then when I press play, you can see here that when I press 1, it says 10 and hello. So we updated the value here. All right, so let's go ahead and move on from events to functions. And I want you to think of functions for now as just little reusable blocks of code, right? So you sometimes will create a function that's a timer or that has like a specific purpose or function, right? All right, so let's create a function, and this function essentially adds health to our player. So we have a variable here, and it's called health, right? And it's currently set to 100. So let's go ahead and set this to 0. And let's save this out. And I'm going to go up to the section up here that's called functions. I'm going to press this, and I'm going to call this add health. So all this function does is adds health to our player. So let's start off by just checking if our function is working, right? Which is, I'm assuming we know that it's going to work, but let's just add a print string here. And then hello, we could just say hello from inside the function. So something like that, okay? And let's adjust a little bit of our spelling there. It's kind of hard when it's so tiny, right, to see. So hello from inside the function. All right, there we go. So that's what this function does, right? So I'm going to compile and save that. And then inside of our event graph, because we're inside the function now, right? I can actually drag out this function called add health and drop it in here. Now you can see, just like test event, that's an event, this one is add health, right? And that's a function. And this is the test event function. And then here's our test event, custom event. So what I can do is when I press 1, is I can call add health, right? So let's test out how we're going to call our custom function. So I press play here. Nothing happens. When I press 1, it says hello from inside the function. So that's, we're just looking at one way to call a function. All right, so let's go back inside of our function. We can go up here into the breadcrumb, or we can double click this, and this will take us inside of our function. So let's get our health variable here. And we're just going to say, we're going to have an add, we'll grab our integer add. So let's drag this out. And we have a function, see the little f there, and it's just an operator, and it adds something. So let's say this, we get a health pickup, and it adds 10. And then what we can do is we can set our health, right? So we can set health, and what we're going to do is we're going to set the value of health plus 10, and we'll set it there. And so what happens is every time we press 1, or let's say we had this hooked up to a trigger, we should add 1 to health. So let's press play here. I press 1, you can see, oh, hello from inside of health function. That's not what we want. We want to wire this into the string, and we want to compile and save that. And now when I press 1 here, you can see 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 as I'm pressing the number 1. So let's hit escape. And this is all happening inside of our custom function, right? So if I go to my event graph, that's happening all inside of this. So this is sort of compressing or creating all of this logic. So anytime I need to add health, whether it's with pressing the 1, or say I have a custom event that's a trigger, because we have that on overlap, which I deleted, I believe. And I could do on overlap, and if we overlap a trigger, it'll go to add health, and it'll add 10 to the health here. Another thing you could do is you can actually collapse this. So if I select all of these, right, this is a test event, right? And all it's doing is when I run this test event, it prints. Let's see if there's something with a little better logic. Here's this, right? Here's event begin play. And then say our graph is just getting a little bit there's too much going on. I could select both of these and then right click on the node itself, and I could just do collapse nodes. And what that'll do is that'll collapse this, and I can rename this instead of collapse graph to get player input, or get player controller, something like that, or input, I guess is a good way of putting it, right? And so it's called get player input. And if I hover over it, you can see the logic, and if I double click it, it'll show me, oh, okay, you have enable input here, you have this, stuff like that, and it'll still work. So this is another way of kind of cleaning up your code, right? So if we go back to our event graph, which if you don't see it there, you can double click it. We've got this, which exists here. And then we have this, which is just an add health function. So you can see how we can sort of clean up our graph so it's not all over the place instead of just creating a bunch of string of nodes. So if I compile and save this, and I go inside of here and I press play, and I press the number 1, you can see the logic still works. It's just we're starting to clean up the logic within our code. But what you generally wouldn't do at the end of the logic is you wouldn't have a print string here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and delete this out. What you would have is you'd have your function here, and you'd have this section called output. So I'm going to go ahead and click output here, and I'm going to leave it as an integer, and I'm just going to name this health. And then what I could do with my return node is I could wire this directly in here into my return node. This is where it's ending, and I can wire health into here. And when I go to compile and save this, and I go back into my event graph, you can see now I have a node for health. And what I would do is I would grab this print string variable here, wire this in here, and then wire health into here. And then I'm going to compile and save this. I'm going to go back into my BP level, and let's save this out. And now when I press 1, it'll go into my function, it'll do all of this logic, and it'll return whatever health is, and it'll print it to my print string here. So let's take a look at this. If I press play, and I press the number 1, you can see it's doing the same thing. So that's a way of returning info or returning information from our function. And you're going to hear the word method a lot. Function and method are often used interchangeably. I think what we'll do next is, because this is getting a little long, and give you guys a little break, is we'll get into macros as well as function inputs and outputs in the next lesson.